Making your readers disappear is great. Reading a book and feeling like you're inside the story's world is such a wonderful experience, but how do you do that with your own writing? If you're new here, hi, I'm Katri and this is Protagonist Crafts, the place for people who are kind of obsessed with that whole writing thing. If you're a modern writer reading, what? If you're a modern writer writing for modern readers, it's rarely a good idea to just prattle on about the details of your setting without advancing anything in the meantime. It also isn't quite as immersive as you feel like inside your own little head. And here's what you actually need to do. Make your readers experience your world through your characters. What this means is that you need to employ all of their 5 senses, but you also need to have them interacting with their setting. Interacting with their environment doesn't just mean pushing buttons and pulling levers. It means stuff like putting on more clothes when it's cold. Also, you could use their inner feelings and inner monologue, as well as actual dialogue to reveal the setting. What often happens with beginner writers, and what also can happen with more seasoned writers' first drafts, is that we have this pet way of describing our settings, and we just use that. Instead, you need to be using all the tricks that you have. Yes, you do need to use some of them more sparingly, like having your characters talk about the setting, but covering all your bases is what actually creates this immersive experience for your readers. That's the thing that makes it feel like a real world, and that makes your readers disappear into your writing so much that they forget to pay their bills, and they forget that they had a cup of tea cooling down on the kitchen counter. Will they put it in the microwave to heat it up? Nobody knows. They're still reading. Of course, it's a lot easier to do this when you do know what actually is in there in your story's world. If you're one of those people who finds it hard to see things inside your head, then you need to do some more work up front. So that could be just making lists of things that are there in your setting, like you're writing about a room and then you make a list of things that are in there, items, stuff, what does it look like, etc. Or you could create these Pinterest boards about your story and your setting. Anything really that helps you see it, because if you don't see it, then you can't show it. When you want to practice this stuff, you should start from the world around you and start noticing things. And oh, how did I end up here? Oh well. The stair feels kind of hard under me, and the paint is chipping. Did I say the stairs are old? No, I didn't, but I bet you figured it out anyway. So that was actually one of those show don't tell tricks that I employed there. And no, you don't need to write like that all the time. Sometimes it's totally fine just to tell something, especially when it's not something that is significant. But when you want your readers to truly be in your world and to feel it, then yes, you might need to employ words. I don't know why I used the word employ again. Utilize. You might want to use words that are more interesting than just saying the stairs were old. And a question that you might want to consider often when you're writing is, how do you know? But sometimes also, is there another way that you could experience it? So if these wooden stairs are old, how do you know? Well, again, like I said, paint is chipping, but also, I don't know, they're kind of ugly. They're not rickety, fortunately, but someone else's stairs might be. And when it comes to experiencing things differently and using all the senses, sometimes you can only use one of them. For example, thinking of colors. You can't really experience colors any other way than by seeing them. And on the topic of seeing, you don't actually need to say something like, she could see the leaves were yellow, unless the act of seeing is somehow significant there. Because you know what? We all see colors. So unless there's some kind of a difference between seeing the yellow and tasting the yellow that is, specific to your story, then yes, do mention that. But yeah, you could just say the leaves were yellow. The leaves had turned yellow. But then even that, could you say that more interestingly? Perhaps. Or maybe you could even say she picked up a yellow leaf, if that makes sense for your story. So focusing on using our senses and your characters and interacting with the world, let's see what we can come up when we actually experience the real world. Instead of saying something like, the tree was really big, you could say something like, the tree was much bigger than the last time that she was there. And again, you don't need to do stuff like this all the time. I'm just giving you inspiration for how to make your setting writing more interesting and more immersive. I don't know if you can hear it, but I can hear the leaves flapping in the wind. That doesn't just tell you that there's a tree with leaves, but also tells you that it's windy. And now that I'm walking here, you know, on our backyard, I can hear the leaves crunching under my shoes. You could also describe the shoes somehow. I'm wearing leather shoes. Maybe my socks could be wet. Fortunately, they're not right now, but your character's socks could be wet inside their leather boots while they were walking on the leaves that were crunching under their footsteps. Those are my cat's graves. One of the... Oh, poor thing, her face is gone. I mean, well, her real face has been eaten by maggots long ago. What are you doing, camera? But instead of saying she had buried her cats in the backyard, you could mention the tombstones, and you could mention that one of them had already chipped, perhaps saying that it had been there for quite a while, and also the elements had corroded away the poor thing's face. Oh no. Also, there's a lot of leaves there and other kind of stuff growing, which means that I haven't been raking here at all. Is that interesting information? It could be. And let's talk about smell. What can you smell when you're outside? Currently, it's October, so it's autumn. There's going to be a video about writing about autumn, so I will go more into detail there, but just think when you're outside, for example, what can you smell? Currently, I can smell the leaves. Are there smells coming from other people's houses, for example? And then what else can they hear? Ooh, I can see my neighbor over there. I'm going the other way. I'm pretty sure they already think I'm weird enough. They don't need to see me filming more content here, but also I will be filming shorts later on, wearing not as many clothes as I should be, so. But what can I hear right now? There are some cars in the distance, not very close by. I can also hear a train somewhere even further away. There are no passenger trains coming here. There are a lot of trees. I can hear the branches and the leaves, you know, rustling. There are birds. Earlier there was an entire flock of birds, but not anymore. I think they just continued on their travels. And is this important information? Is this interesting? It could be, because actually what I've done, I have revealed sort of where I live. And by that I mean you can pretty obviously tell from there that I don't live in the middle of nowhere completely, because there are cars and there is a train. However, I also don't live in the middle of like huge city like New York and stuff, because, you know, I just talked about the forest and also the cars. They're not as close as they would be in a huge city, or even just a middle-sized city. I live in a very small town with, you know, as you can see, a lot of forest behind me. She lived right next to a forest. That does say something. But how could I, or should I, interact with my environment here in my backyard? Somebody definitely should be raking here. Maybe your character is raking, and that could also reveal something about this particular character. Do they enjoy manual labor? Is it easy to them or difficult? And look, what did I find? Surely I am too old to get on the swing, right? I can't believe you'd think that. God, do you even know me? I would have sat on it, but it's actually wet. What does that say? It says that it's been raining, but it also says that I don't want to get my butt wet. Is that important information? It could be. Stop following me. God, it's weird. I wanted to show you my cats, but oh no, there's one. No, actually two. I don't know, am I going blind? Hello, cats. Would you include this catio in your writing? Perhaps you should. If you don't have a catio, not like in your story, but in your real life, you definitely need one. According to experts, you know what these are? Christmas lights in October. And you don't have to say they already had Christmas lights in October, when you could say something like the Christmas lights blinked orange lights in the gloomy October night. And I realized I forgot the little fluffy thing from my microphone, but let's hope that it isn't too windy. Nettles. She avoided the nettles when picking up a flower. What does that say? It could say something interesting. What can we experience here on this walk? Again, I can hear the leaves, but also I can hear some kind of a bird knocking there in the tree. I can't hear the neighbors, which is important and interesting information. It's a very quiet neighborhood. I don't need to say that it's a quiet neighborhood if I can just say she couldn't hear any of the neighbors. The light here is not flattering. I could say there was a light drizzle and it didn't bother her, but you might as well just say the light drizzle didn't bother her. And you definitely don't need to say she was wearing a yellow coat when you could say her yellow coat was protecting her from the light drizzle. The days were getting cooler and the leaves around her were changing to all kinds of colors. Okay, that sounded weird, but did you hear me saying that it's autumn? You didn't, but you probably figured it out anyway. She looked both ways before crossing the street. Not that there was a lot of traffic to begin with. There you get the image of it being a quiet little place without anybody needing to say if it was a quiet little place. And here I could say that there was a narrow path and you could hear more of the birds singing. That could tell you that I'm going deeper into the forest. Would you want to say something different besides it was a narrow path? You definitely could. You could say something like she turned to a path that was a lot muddier and narrower than before. Something like she hoped that there wouldn't be other people because there wasn't a lot of space on the path. And she didn't want to fall into the stream. I said she didn't want to fall into the stream. Thank you. Most of this I am just like ad-libbing here, so I'm sorry for any stuttering that might occur. Yeah, just showing you the thought process of doing all this stuff instead of trying to be perfect. So I hope that you can appreciate that. From this video you can get a pretty good look at of the environment where I personally live, and you know, I can only do this kind of a wandering and describing exercise in places where I have access to. So if you're writing about like a big city, then you would be writing very different things. But I would love to do these kinds of videos in multiple locations. So if you like this, let me know. Or if you don't like this, or if you'd like me to do this better somewhere else, I'd also love to do that. If you're, say, writing about London, maybe, then it would probably be very different from what I'm giving you tips for here. If you'd like to sponsor my trip to London, you should you should check out Writer Lifestyle on Etsy and purchase some of my extremely useful writer tools and resources. Thanks in advance. Also, if you're like secretly in love with me or something, feel free to just send me money. Now, I don't know what this thing is called, but when it gets wet, it's kind of precarious to walk on because it gets slippery. It is grey. It's got moss growing on it. Again, you don't need to say that it's old when you can just show what it's like being old wood. And we're going to climb over there. I will probably spare you the actual climb because I can imagine I am huffing and puffing enough as it is. I was just doing, one time I was filming this video, it was a short video, and I was walking in our backyard, and I was just breathing so heavily. I don't know why anyone breathes that loudly. I must be the loudest breather in the world. You know what, maybe I will climb it with you and I will just put some music to it, alright? The main character of this video just got out of breath, walking up the stairs, which he found highly embarrassing. I hope you like the view. So maybe instead of saying there were a lot of stairs, you could say she got out of breath by walking up all those stairs. I don't know. So if I was a character here, what would I be feeling with all my senses? Well, I just got warm under my layers of clothes. I can smell the fresh air. I can hear, I can't hear the cars right now, but I can hear the dogs barking from across the lake, from the rich people houses. I haven't yet talked about taste in this particular video because I didn't really want to lick any leaves, you know, and there weren't any berries to eat. But you know, that is always something that you might still want to consider. Maybe there are some berries that you know, character can pick up and, you know, eat. And that is also not just using the sensory information, but also interacting with the environment, just as it would be if I decided to, you know, I wasn't going to do that. Did you really think I was going to do that? Weirdo. And the most basic thing, again, sight. But what can we see here? I'm saying the most basic thing because usually many writers default to things that you can see or that the characters can see, but let's talk about that anyway. It's not pointless or useless or, you know, meaningless. So again, it is autumn and I need to make its own video about writing about autumn. I don't know where the sentence was going, whatever. But the leaves, they're all shades of yellow, orange, brown around me. And again, some oldness that I can see here. There are pieces of the bird watching tower missing. There's some graffiti there, some moss growing on the wood, something that looks a lot like toilet paper, but I hope isn't. And the sky is almost entirely grey. But you don't need to say the sky was grey. You could say she didn't see any of the blue of the sky that she loved so much. Or go the other way, she loved it when she couldn't see the sun during the day. Again, it's not necessary to be like that all the time. Sometimes you could just say it was a cloudy day, but again, I'm giving you inspiration for how to approach describing things differently. But what can I feel? The wood here. It isn't rough. It's not like it's been worn out by the season, so it doesn't have like sticks poking out or something. I can feel the wind kind of lightly, you know, ruffling my hair and stuff. It's not rainy or anything, so fortunately I can't feel my shoes being wet or my coat being wet, for example. But let's go somewhere different now. You know, going down these stairs is kind of scary, but you don't need to say she was scared. You could say she descended slowly while gripping the old hand railing. She should have definitely slowed down. She almost fell over and nearly grabbed her pants. What details of interest are there? There are these knobbly roots. So you could mention your character almost tripping over to one of those. The path is covered by leaves, and later in the year when it gets colder and the leaves are falling and have fallen and it's a lot rainier, it could be really slimy and slippery. What do you call these mushroom things that grow from the trees? These are really interesting. I think if you include details like that, you can make the forest seem older. You know, these trees, they are kind of old. And I don't know why I keep talking about old things. But yeah, you don't need to say something is old when you can think of the question, how do you know? What does an old tree or an old forest or old stairs, an old bird watching tower, what do they look like? And as I'm walking, what can I hear? There's also some, maybe not gravel, but something making a crunching noise under my boots. And some of the path is kind of wet, so there's this sort of squelching that comes from walking here. Whew. Some kind of a bug just grazed my hand. I did not like that. So you could say she yelped when she noticed a bug flying into her face or something like that. You don't need to say that she was frightened by the bug. But again, that went into more like character descriptions. But yeah, I just wanted to mention it. Oh, and look, there's mud. You don't need to say there was mud on the path. You could say she tried to avoid stepping into the mud. She successfully avoided the mud, but also she might slip and fall. Depending on your story, I'm not going to demonstrate slipping and falling for you. You want to avoid saying things like there was or there were, you know. So instead, you might want to say, she sat down on a bench by the lake. I'd say, well, here's the lake in question. It's lakey and watery. Yeah, that's definitely what I would write. But what can we actually see there? I would say it's kind of foggy over there. You can't really see very far. So instead of just saying it was foggy, you could say she couldn't see across the lake to the other shore, or something like that. And I know that I earlier said that you shouldn't say things like she saw, like usually in your writing, but in this case the not being able to see was significant. The yellowed trees reflected nicely on the surface of the lake. From that, again, the trees were yellow. Also, you could sort of like deduce that it wasn't a particularly windy day because you could see the reflection on the lake. What else can we think of here? What does the water feel like? You could have your character walk into the water and freezing her little feet off. I'm not going to do that. I don't love you that much. And then there you could say she sat down on the rocks and her bottom got cold. Very important information to include, I am sure. And you don't need to say that it was peaceful. You could say you could barely hear anything by the lake. There were no people there. Oh, I said there were no. How else could I phrase that? She was alone at the beach. She could only hear the birds and the fountain and the sand under her boots. She got some sand into her boots. Options. And in winter, when the lake is frozen over, she can walk all the way across to the other side. But then it's also incredibly windy. A lot of people she knew had boats by the lake, but she had never had one. Again, more of a character description than a setting description, but something interesting to mention. You don't need to say she was less wealthy than some other people when you could just talk about boats. Boats. Anyway, I hope you found this little exercise useful, and I don't want you to look at it as like a prescription for how you need to do all of your writing, but just some examples on how to approach descriptions in your writing, and just some inspiration for how to mention things naturally in your stories. So do let me know if you'd like to see more videos like this, and lightly tap the like button while you're at it. I will see you in another video, or at the lakeside, or at the library, or whatever.